Plein Air Magazine, for people who love painting outdoors. pleinairmagazine.com.
But I have been very, very, very busy for the last few days. And so I'm a little tired and I just got back from the Tucson Plein Air Convention. And I know you guys want to hear about it. It was like extraordinary. It was just absolutely extraordinary. I'd never been in Tucson before. And so just because of the landscape. How many of you have been to Tucson before? Oh my God, before you go, you have to go to Tucson. I had never been there. With all the stuff that I've done before, I've never been to Tucson before. And so, I tell you, so something happened unique that you guys didn't hear about, but Wednesday before we were supposed to go, this was Wednesday a week ago, we had already had our class. I get an SOS from Allie, and Allie is Eric Rhodes' secretary, and she's amazing. She keeps everything flowing for Eric, and Eric owns Plein Air Magazine, and Eric hosts the Plein Air Convention, so he's the #1 guy. And so, Eric is wonderful, especially with dictating. He has things for people to do, so he calls somebody up and says, here, take care of that, take care of that. Well, at the last minute, the gal that was supposed to do the nocturne painting demonstration, and that is, nocturne means night. So it's nighttime painting demonstration. She broke her leg. And so I get this, this is like 2 days or 3 days before the convention. So Allie calls me up. Well, first I get a text from her. She says, SOS ASAP now. Call me. And I'm like going, wow, this is like, So I'm driving up from my classes in Reading, and I pull over because I figure this is a pretty big deal. I've got to, find out what this is about. So I get on the phone, and she's so delightful. She says, we have an emergency. And I go, what is it? And she said, could you do us a favor? And I said, yes. I just said yes. Not even knowing what it was. Because, Eric, and he gets kind of mad at me when I do this, but he has actually created the plein air movement himself. 15 years ago, we were sitting in a bar in the Fillmore, or even 20 years ago, and I was just starting my television show, and Eric and I were sitting at the bar in the Fillmore in San Francisco, and we were contemplating whether or not we should be using outdoor painting or plein air painting. And we were having a serious discussion about that. And I said to Eric, I don't think it's a good idea to have a magazine that you have to educate people on the term of what it is. So when you go to people and you say, oh, I paint plein air, especially back then, nobody knew what that was. I said, you have to educate them first and then explain to them. It's much better to actually have in the title, outdoor painting. People go, oh, you paint outdoors. That's it makes it a lot quicker. So I said, well, for my television show, I secured the website outdoorpainting.com. And I assume, of course I'm not sure, that Eric secured that night outdoorpainter.com. Okay, I'm assuming it's awfully close. Just in case, he wasn't quite sure. But anyway, so he's made this phenomenal success. And so he is responsible, I feel, single-handedly pulling all of these, the whole art movement together to make all of this happen, including this convention. which is literally taking everything out there, which is really a market that is splintered, and really gluing everything together to have a focus. I feel, in my professional view, and I've been doing plein air painting since 1980, that without him, I can't imagine that the movement would be pulled together. So, I mean, he's really an incredible guy. And so to have him call up, or his secretary saying, we need something, it was like, yes. Okay, what is it? She said, the plein air painter that paints the nocturne scene broke her leg, and we wanted to know if you would demonstrate instead of her. And I said, really?
You didn't say yes?
No, well, I just paused for a second. I had already said yes, but now I am in control a little bit. No. I love inspiring people. I love going to the Plein Air Convention and helping people. And so it was like, okay, yeah, I can do that. But I'm not just about nocturne paintings. And so for me, it was kind of like, how do I take what I know and simplify it to a nocturne painting? Because they're not really that complicated, but they are kind of interesting to learn. So I said, yes, I'll do it for you. And then I went home and decided I better sharpen up, because it had been a year since I actually went outdoors and painted a night scene. Because we were coming out of winter, you know, and so I hadn't. And so I decided, well, you know, let me go see what other artists are doing to get familiar with it and put together my talk. It's only 3 days from when she asked me, so I wanted to at least know, you know, what's really up to date on night paintings. And I put in night painting, okay, just night painting. And I put enter in Google. The #1 image that showed up in Google search was my painting.
Oh, really?
It was a Mount Shasta. It was a Mount Shasta painting with the little fire. Yeah, it's the #1 image under. It's either plein air night painting or night painting. No, it's plein air night painting. #1 image. Very first top right-hand corner. I said, well, I don't need to do any more searches. I'm obviously on Google the top search on that. So I shut my computer down and I said, well, what I'll do is I'll bring the night scene that I did in Mount Shasta and I'll use that as a demo piece. So I found the person who had the night scene. I said, could I borrow it back? I need it for a demo. And she said, yeah, no problem. So I brought that in. And then I took off to go to Tucson. And it was last Tuesday. I haven't stopped since. I could not imagine this weekend be any more superb than, I mean, think about the best thing that could possibly happen and multiply that times 100. And so I go down there and I'm driving, you know, in California, boring throughout, out in the desert there, Palm Springs. I'm like, you know, and I'm listening to my tunes thinking, okay, you know, Shasta at night, this is what I'm going to cover. And, you know, the thing that I got, though, is that I'm so much more than just about a moon and a little campfire. And I just am so much more. You guys know that. You know, I just don't say, okay, just follow me and paint. So I'm thinking, well, you know, I can talk about composition and I can talk about values and light and temperature. You know, I don't have to just railroad it into just the topic. And so then all of a sudden I go up and over and I'm like getting into a landscape area that I have never seen before. Huge Sawoya cactus that were just going, I mean, not taller than this building. I mean, just forest, and I mean, one after that. And then cactus fields with every possible cactus you could possibly imagine. So dense that you can't even see the desert when you walk out in it. It literally is walls. Down on the floor filled with wildlife. And this time, the wildflowers, because of the rains and stuff, were just all over. It was so spectacular. And then I thought about my little Mount Shasta, you know, scene. And I thought, I can't come down here to this place and do a demo of Mount Shasta. So I said, I'm going to have to go out into the desert tonight and paint something to paint. So I have something to talk about and warm up for the conference. So I made a right and just started driving. And those roads go from paved to dirt, dirt to paved, back to dirt, back to paved. And I'm like going, I felt like, you know, when I talk in my workshops, I talk about the Moses syndrome. You know, where you wander the desert for 40 years trying to find the promised land. You know, that perfect spot, you know, and then, you know, you never really quite get it. So you say, oh, what the hell, we'll just turn this into Jerusalem or whatever. And so, so I find a spot where I can pull my car over and I start painting. And at this point, the sun hasn't gone down. So I have everything that I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to talk about all the stuff that I know about painting. And we've discussed it all about having your composition lean towards the right, having 3 points in your focal points, all of the things that we do. I wanted everybody there that was coming to the room be absolutely inspired. And so I set it up, I had my cactus and stuff, and it got darker and darker and darker and darker and darker, and then it was pitch black. I mean, it got to the point where I couldn't see anything. But I did do a pretty unique little sketch.
Are we going to get to see it?
Yes. Here's a sketch. Okay?
Oh my God.
So, yes. So let's... So anyway, so this was probably done in about an hour. This actually was the moon up in here. And so what we were doing is, you still see it? Is it? Yeah. Okay. When I got out there, I was anticipating my talk. And I decided that it was such an honor to be able to do this demonstration that I wasn't going to leave anything behind. All the things that we talk about, I, in my head, somehow organized. And we had spent the day listening to Matt Smith give a full class. Now, the awesome thing about the convention is that this time there were 900 people there. 900 plein air painters. You couldn't swing a brush anywhere without hitting one of them. And every one of them is just like you, just awesome, awesome, awesome people. Everyone has this in common. Sometimes your spouse doesn't, they'll put up with you painting somewhere. But when you go to this, everybody there is a painter. So you could say, hey, let's go paint. Let's go do this. You stop. You trip over them. You know, when I walked up to the conference, there's somebody in the front there. And I tapped him on the shoulder and he looked up at me and he goes, oh my God, you're that guy on the computer with the YouTube thing. And I said, yeah. How did you guess? And he goes, look at your outfit. And we became like really because, you know, you do kind of separate and come together, but you end up with these beacons, you know. And you have like Matt Smith, he was just on the cover of Plein Air magazine. And I mean, he's like the guru, the top notch. And so we sat there and we were listening to him talk. And he was talking about things, and a lot of the things that he was saying, I'm like going, uh-oh, we're going to have a problem with my talk, because a lot of the things were in reverse. And thank God he said, you know, there are artists out here that have other philosophies, and so, you know, you kind of take one or the other. You know, he kind of thought, you know, his is right, which it is because he's Matt Smith, right? So it was like, oh my God, now I have to like think about this. And I said, screw it. I'm just going to go ahead and do the thing that I was going to do it. I set up, and it was so, I mean, first thing, everybody was out there painting, and I'm totally dedicated to inspire people. I mean, for me, that's it. And, you know, when they asked me to do the demo, I was like, okay, well, I'll put that on top of everything else. Prior to that, Eric had asked me if I would actually be part of the opening ceremonies. And I was like, are you kidding? You know, I was like the fourth person on stage, and Eric was behind me. And I was like going, this is really incredible. So I no longer came to the Plein Air Conference like a stranger. I was actually like on stage with Eric, part of it. So it was like so phenomenal to be there. But I think the reason why that happened was I have consistently gone there from year to year to year. And consequently, yeah, you could go to the convention once, and I don't think that really is the power. I think when you go year after year after year, people all of a sudden realize, oh, I've seen you before. And it strengthens possibilities. And I met people who said, oh, I saw you a couple of years and I needed to finally extend my hand. But this year when I went there, I was completely overwhelmed with the amount of people who watch the YouTube videos that I do. Completely overwhelmed. I couldn't go 5 feet without bumping into people trying to get a photograph with me or saying, because they go, oh my God, your YouTube videos are so awesome. I had no idea that YouTube is so much bigger than PBS. Okay, so I was like, you know, excuse me. Of course, they saw my television show. It was awesome. And I know I'm going to ramble here a little bit, but it was so incredible. The entire experience was so incredible. So I get up to a point. I even had a groupie. This lovely gal, a college gal, probably a freshman in college, skinny as a rail, beautiful girl. You would never think that she'd be like in the desert. You know, she should be like a model somewhere. And she has a book with her, and she goes, I've been drawing you. And I go, what? And she goes, well, don't get all weird about it. I'm not a stalker. And I told her, I said, I don't mind you being a stalker. I said, I've never had one before, so let me see what it feels like. And she said, could I follow you around and all that? And I said, sure. I said, I'm trying to set up for my demo, but yeah. So she followed me around, and oh, she was so lovely. Because, you know, when you're busy like that, I would say, oh my God, I don't have my turpentine. She'd go, I go get it. You know, oh, she was just, I mean, I had to even thank her. She kept the time down because I can ramble. Some of you should do that when I'm talking here. But she just followed me and drew me and helped me. And I said, where's my towel? She filled my water bottles while I was talking. It was awesome. Like, you know, 6 or 8 drawings of me. And I had no idea she was drawing me all day. So it was really, really cool.
Was it good?
Yeah, they were good. And I was like, wow, this is cool. I feel like a rock star. You know? You know, it's like, hey. So everybody's out painting like crazy, and at first I was helping them because I would go to one person after another, because that's my job when I go there, is to help people. And so I have this thing which basically says, hey, I'm a teacher, and Eric gave this, so all the teachers there were 60 teachers there, and Eric gave us red hats this year. And so what I would do is wander around like Moses, you know, and there were all these people tucked in the desert, and I would walk up and I would go, can I help you? And they would go, oh my God, yes, I have a question. I would be honored if you would stop. And I would go find people way in the desert, and I would like figure out how they got out there. And when I finally got out there, I would go, can I help you? And they go, oh no, I came out here because I was too afraid because I'd never painted before. And I go, they said, oh, you know, you guys are too important to be helping me. You know, maybe next year. I go, no, we're here to help the beginners. And there was so many. The beginners were all, they wore tags for every year. So the white people had, the newbies had a white tag. And so it was, you could tell them. So I was on the white tag patrol, you know. And so, because those people were obviously the ones that I could help the most. So I would go through it. But then I had to go and get ready for my demo. And then somebody said, Eric is going to introduce you. And I was like, because Eric there is busy. And he has a lot of his staff introduce the artist. And when Eric said he was going to come, when I heard that Eric was going to come and introduce me for my demo, I was like, wow, that was awesome. And I mean, I was like humbled at that point. And he did an awesome introduction. And it was so great because when he introduced me, he said, does anybody here watch the Grandview? You know, 3/4 of the room raised their hands. And I was like, yes. He was a little surprised. It's like, you figure like 50-50. I mean, no, it was like, the band. So I was in a space of just total. Now everybody had just painted all day and listened to lectures and started at 6:30 in the morning. It's now 7 at night. Now you can imagine these people are out in the desert where it's hot and sitting in the sun all day long painting. You know how tired you get? Yeah. And so people were coming in going, oh, excuse me, I'm just here for a minute. I wanted to see you, but I don't think I'm going to make it, And so they had a large platform up there for the demonstrators. And the platform was as big as that table. Okay. And they had lights and cameras on the painting there. And so, I'd see them coming in and while they were waiting, you could see they were like, falling asleep. And I said, uh-oh, we're in trouble. I said, this is a tough room. This is a really tough room. You're walking into a space where people are forcing themselves to be there and expect them to be looking at a person standing on a table like that at light, after looking at light all day. And I said, we got a problem here. So I decided, I'm not going to go up there. I'm going to deliver most of my talk. I'll go up there and paint. But I sat down and I started to deliver my talk down around them. So they were all lined up in the thing. So I started talking to them. And I said, everything I'm going to tell you isn't true. Because I just followed Matt Smith. And some of this stuff I was going to say was contradictory to what he was saying. So I said, just assume that it is. But if you tell Matt, tell him it's not. Okay, just say, oh no, he's just telling lies over there, don't worry. So I said, just assume that maybe what I have to say is correct, and let's just try this on. So I started, and I couldn't have been more on. I went from composition to focal points to things that we talk about over and over and over again. And I said, I'm going to deliver something at the end of this talk right now before I paint that is going to blow you away. It is something that I don't teach outside of my classes. I only teach in my workshops, and I only teach in my workshops, or I teach them in my classes. That's all the only place I teach them. I don't teach them online. I don't teach them on YouTube. It's the one thing. And so I slowly worked my talk to that point. And then when I told them about the temperatures and what we know about light, I had their attention, and I would sit there. I'd say, this is the most important thing you could know about painting. This is it. This is completely, it will blow you away. And everybody was so intrigued with what I had to say that I milked it. I sat there and just stood there. And they were waiting for that. I mean, a lot of these people had never painted outdoors before. And then I went and got a drink of water, and then I came back again and I waited. They call that a pregnant wait. And then all of a sudden it was obvious that I was waiting. And then I said, excuse me, folks, because at this point the entire room had filled up. And I said, close the doors, I don't want this to get out, and I don't want you guys to share any of this, okay? And I said, excuse me for my indulgence, but I live in Mount Shasta. And I never in my life have this many people waiting to listen to what I have to say. So I'm going to enjoy it for a while. And then I told them, and you guys know what that is, but anyway, we'll jump over that. They were spellbound. Confused, but spellbound. It was like I just threw something down on the ground. And then I went up and started painting up there. And I went through all of the things that we talk about in our classes, and it couldn't have been better. And I reproduced parts of this painting. One of the gals came up and she goes, oh my God, I'll buy that. And the painting was broken up into pieces to explain the things that I was. She said, I want to buy that. And I said, no, you can have it if you want. because she said, I have been waiting to hear that. Never made sense, and now you made sense out of that. So it was, I couldn't get people to leave. You know, they were still hanging around. The security says it's 9 o'clock, and these are people that came in asleep, and they couldn't leave. So we went the next day and we did the marketing boot camp and stuff, and another couple of demos, and I was feeling really tired and kind of a little like, when you get that kind of responsibility to give a demo at a place like that, you kind of come down off of that a little bit. And then the following night, I had to take a group of people outdoors and paint in the dark. Yeah. And so, I had to kind of prep for that. But so I decided, around 10 o'clock I would go outside. And everybody's in the conference room, and I step outside. And I see somebody painting with her back towards me. And she's in her own little business. And I kind of walk up to her like this, but crunching, not to scare her. And I said, do you need any help? And she looked up at me, and it was like looking at a Cocker Spaniel. Her eyes were completely open, and they started watering.
Oh no.
And she stood up so fast that her chair knocked over. She bumped her easel. It was like, and she put her arms around me, and she was crying on my shoulder. And I said, are you okay? And I was like, what's going on? And she said she had been painting for 8 years. She had done workshops all over the country trying to figure out how she was going to learn how to paint. She was so frustrated that she signed up for this conference thinking, if I don't get it this weekend, I'm quitting. If I can't figure this out, she could not figure out how in the world to make this work. Every time she would go outside. And she said, I was in your demonstration yesterday. I was in your demonstration yesterday, and I listened to you. And I listened to you saying, what if this would work for you? And she said, I didn't bother going into the conference. She said, I went outside and decided that I was going to try what you had to offer as like a last-ditch effort. And she sat there and she said, everything worked. She was pure joy in painting. She had totally, for the first time in 8 years, she actually got something on her canvas that she was happy with. And that's the kind of stuff that you go to this conference for, is that kind of thing. And it might have been just one person, but you got 900 people there. Last year there was 700 people there. And while Eric was introducing me, I was saying, he said, this year we have 900 people. And I said, well, those extra 300 people you can count came from the Grandview. But to see somebody go 8 years and all of a sudden not get it, and then all of a sudden be able to hand them their future was just amazing. And those are the kind of things that happen in those things. So the whole weekend was one thing after another it was just, from the beginning to the end, it was incredible. I decided that I was going to take a group of people, I was going to go take the group of people out for the night painting. And so we went out to the front of the hotel there. These were all new people. They had never painted outdoors at night before. And night painting is not an easy thing to do. That's kind of a whole different discipline altogether. So I'm driving, I spent some time with them, and then I said to people, and this is what was so awesome. I said to people during the day, I said, well, were you at my demo last night? And you know what they said? They said, no, I missed it, but I heard I should have been there. Everybody was saying, oh my God, I wish I were there. So when I started taking the people out the following day for the night, there was this huge crowd of people that hadn't heard what I had to say, and they were hoping that I was going to give another demonstration. And I told them, I said, no, the demonstration was last night. I'm taking everybody out to paint. And they said, but everybody's talking about your demo. And I said, well, I'll tell you what. You guys sit in the middle, and I'll recap the whole demo for you, and I'll have everybody else paint on the outside of that, and we'll stay all together. And so we went out to the spot. It was only right in front of the hotel there. And I said, and I started giving my lecture and talk while the people who saw my demo started applying the things that I talked about. There was one gal there, new to the, and this is like the first time she painted outdoors at night. And I was like, wow. I'm driving home because I had to leave last night. So I'm driving home, and she texts me this painting, and she says, I'm doing my happy dance. Okay? I'm just going to show you real quick.
That's cute.
Okay. Isn't that beautiful? Next year's Plein Air Convention is in San Diego. Yes, you got to go.
Yeah.
Since San Diego is such an easy place to go to, I highly recommend that if you want to go to the Plein Air Convention, to set that date. Last night for the first time, it's the first time I even heard about it, and I'm like in the inside loop, that it's going to be in San Diego. And you know, I'm not quite sure. It's probably going to be about the 15th of April, around there. And so I would highly recommend, they have payment schedules that come up.
What's it called? Plein Air Conference?
The Plein Air Convention. Okay, yeah. And so I highly recommend you going to the Plein Air site. And I don't think that they have everything posted right now, but if they do, they have all kinds of payment schedules so that it doesn't become expensive. San Diego is awesome. I can't wait to be there.
San Diego is awesome.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. Yeah, it is going to be fun. And we could drive. It's not like going to Tucson. 7.5 hours. So anyway, so we'll see you there.